My name's Leonard Kozianski. I'm an artist. Welcome to my studio. This is where I work. And I'd like to talk today about a subject that I worked with for many years. Dogs. I painted dogs. I painted white dogs for many years. And so why dogs? Why white dogs? What did they mean? And why did I spend so many years painting them? Well, here's an example of one of those paintings called Wild Dogs, and I painted it in 1982. It's about 6 feet high by 4 feet wide, oil on canvas, and it's sort of very dreamlike. The dogs aren't realistic. They're very white, and their white makes them sort of very spectral, almost ghost-like, and they're in this night landscape. And it's sort of like a very dreamlike landscape. And yet, here's this painting that symbolically represents, conflict and hostility and anger. And why would I want to represent those elements? Why are they important? And, does this have any precedence? Are there other artists from the past who wanted to capture these same emotions? Because they're part of our human psyches. They're part of our human experience. Here's another example. This one's called Caught in the Forest. Again, done in 1982. Oil on canvas, about 4 feet high by 6 feet wide. And here, these dogs running through the woods, and it's obviously at night. There's this mysterious light shining down from above, and these trees trunks are sort of slicing up the animals the way they may be slicing each other up pretty soon. And there's hostility, there's anger. It's the moment of truth. We don't really know the outcome. Will that dog on the left escape? Will those dogs on the right capture it? It's hard to say. But there's also sort of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek quality to this. Okay, and that dog over there on the right about to bite the dog's tail over there on the left. And, very often when we step back from our worst fears, our worst nightmares, we have to sort of laugh at ourselves a little bit because, why were we so afraid? Why were we so hostile? Sometimes those energies, those animal energies, they are very powerful, but then when we step back and look at them from a distance, they can seem, sort of a little ridiculous at times. So I wanted to capture that duality of the experience. So here is this representation, this symbolic representation of these sort of dark animal energies, conflict, hostility, while also having a bit of a tongue-in-cheek quality to them as well. But what are the precedents for this? Where did these ideas come from? Do we have any examples in the history of art that preceded this? Well, here's one example. This is from between 1412 and 1416. This is the December illustration, or the December illumination from a very famous book of hours called the Très Riche Heures. And a book of hours represented or contained the prayers that you were to say throughout the day. And it also contained some illustrations of the months of the year. And here we have an illustration of December. And in December, the labor of that month, the peasants' labor of that month, was the wild boar hunt. And so here they are, they've captured a wild boar. We can see those dogs in a ring around that boar that's on the ground, and that peasant over there on the right blowing the horn, signaling that they've killed the wild boar. And, roasting a wild boar, roasting a wild pig was part of the Christmas celebration, sort of part of the Christmas festivities. So it was very appropriate to this season, to this month. And when we look at those dogs, let's look at them a little more closely. They're so white, and they're almost not quite real. They're not really realistic dogs. Their colors are just way too white. And, so they're very symbolic, almost dreamlike. And it's almost like a dream of the wild boar hunt. It's almost like the fantasy that the hunters have of the hunt, before and when they're describing the hunt later. And so I found this very inspiring. In fact, there's a reproduction of this book of hours that's available. It's a little bit expensive, but it's worth every penny. Well, what else inspired me to do dogs, white dogs, wild dogs? Well, here's a painting from 1565, about 150 years later, called Hunters in the Snow by Peter Bruegel. And he was a Dutch painter. And here we see a group of hunters and their dogs trudging through the snow. It's the dead of winter. And they obviously have not been very successful. They have very dejected looks. Even the dogs look dejected. It's almost like the humans and the animals are experiencing the same emotions, like they're very much connected to each other. But over there on the left, there's someone who's warming themselves by a fire. Okay, let's look a little more closely at that. So here are those hunters trudging through the snow, and they haven't caught anything. Well, that one hunter who's between the two trees, he's carrying a fox over his shoulder. Pretty slim pickings for a hunt. They're not going to get much meat out of that fox. But then over there on the left, there are those people warming themselves by the fire. The hunters are obviously cold. It's the dead of winter. They're trudging through the snow. They're cold, and there are these people that are nice and warm by that fire. And then when we look down below, we can see those people on the pond ice skating, and they're having fun. And so here we have these dejected, cold hunters returning from the hunt with their dogs, very unsuccessful. And on either side of them are people having fun, people warming themselves by a fire. And so they, by contrast, serve to make that dejected quality of the hunters and their dogs even more dejected. Here's a painting by Peter Paul Rubens. And this was done in 1616. This is about 50 years later. And it's called The Wolf and Fox Hunt. And here we see these aristocrats over there on the right, and they're out with their peasants. And the aristocrats, they couldn't catch a wolf or a fox, but the peasants have. And so here we see these wolves and foxes that have been cornered and surrounded by these peasants, and one's blowing a horn to let others know that they're moving in for the kill. And this was painted by Rubens and in his workshop with his assistants. So his assistants painted a large part of this painting, but he himself painted these wolves. Aren't they beautifully painted? And they're so desperate. They're full of desperation and animal energy, and they're trapped. They're about to be killed, and they're lashing out. And the one wolf over there on the left is biting the spear, and the one over on the right is looking back over its shoulder, and its expression is full of energy and anger and hostility towards these people that are moving in for the kill. And what a beautiful painting. This painting is actually very large. It's about 10 feet it's actually about 6 feet, or maybe like 8 by 10 feet. And it's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. And I found it very inspiring, and I still find it very inspiring. That animal energy that is just so passionately represented, so effectively represented. Even in this scene, which isn't at all realistic, but the energy of those animals certainly is powerful. Well, what else has inspired me? Well, this is a painting by George Stubbs, the English painter George Stubbs, called A Lion Attacking a Horse. And here, in this landscape setting, we see this lion on the back of a horse, digging its claws into the horse's back, biting the horse on the back, and the horse screaming in pain. And yet, the horse is pure white. It's very spectral, very almost eerily dreamlike and ghost-like. And this is an example of European Romanticism, where they're trying to capture the power of nature, the energy of nature, and bring it into their lives. And these paintings are very popular with English aristocrats. They would bring these paintings into their castles. But this symbolizes the power of nature. And that power of nature motivates us. It gets us to do things. Okay, it's what motivates us to provide and protect. It causes us to fight wars, to build bridges, start businesses, protect our families. Those animal energies are very important to us, and the romantic painters and the romantic thinkers looked to nature, to that natural energy, to try to realize how important those elements were. Not all paintings in the history of art are pleasant still lifes and portraits. Artists also try to capture those darker sides of the human experience, or maybe those animalistic sides, those animal energy sides, those natural sides of the human experience that maybe we find a little bit unpleasant at times, but which are so motivating and so important to getting us to do things that are important for us. And these paintings are very popular, and he did a number of versions of them. Here's another version of that same theme, where the lion is on the horse's back, biting the horse. And the horse's anatomy is fairly accurate, but the horse itself is not. It's very white and almost ghost-like and dreamy. And it's a symbolic painting rather than a realistic painting. And the Romantic artists were symbolic painters. This is a painting by Henry Fuseli. Painted also. The other ones were painted in 1790, and this one was painted in 1792, but he's a Swiss artist. And this painting is called The Nightmare. And here we have this woman who's passed out, and sitting on top of her is this demon. And behind her is this horse poking its head in, this white horse poking its head in. And obviously, these are representations of the nightmare that she's having. So she's asleep, having this nightmare, and there's that demon, that demonic magic, that black magic figure, and then there's that white horse. And so here in this representation, we have horror, we have dark magic, we have sexuality, because they're sitting on top of this woman, this beautiful woman. And so this painting symbolically represents her dream, her nightmare. And so here's again another romantic painting representing in symbolic form sort of those animal energies, those dark energies that are unleashed when we have a nightmare. And here he is trying to represent that. These paintings were very popular for him. And so when I started painting, I wanted to represent those energies, those dark animal energies, those symbolic dreamlike energies in my own artwork. And so here in this painting, Caught in the Forest, I'm attempting to capture those dark dreamy energies that are inside of us, that are so motivating and so captivating and so important to our human experience. But I also wanted to inject a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek quality to it to, allow us to see those as, to detach ourselves and be a little more distant from them and not allow them to so completely capture our psyches. And here again, the painting Wild Dogs, oil on canvas, 6 feet high by 4 feet wide. That moment of impact, right before impact, when we really don't know the outcome of this struggle. And those dogs in the distance chasing each other in this dreamy, cloudy landscape at night. And so it's sort of very much a spectral, dreamlike, ghost-like scene that isn't meant to be realistic, but is meant to be sort of a symbolic representation of what's going on inside our own psyches. Well, this painting was purchased by the Metropolitan Museum of Art and placed in its permanent collection. And if you're ever at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, you can go to the information desk and ask them, where is Leonard Kozianski's painting Wild Dogs? And they'll tell you that, unfortunately, it's not on display, it's in storage, because most of their collection is in storage. But you can reply with, well, why isn't that on display? It's one of the most important paintings in your collection, and I'd appreciate it if you do that. But there it is, Wild Dogs, a symbolic painting of that dark animal energy realm of our human experience, our human psyche. And this painting allows us, it invites us, it tries to draw those energies out of us. It invites us to project our own psyches onto this symbolic realm so that we can experience that vicariously and see it as a valuable and important part of our own personal human experience. Well, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate your watching this video. And if you wouldn't mind, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, like the video, add a comment. I answer all the comments, and share it with your friends. But thanks for watching.
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe, like, and share.
And don't forget to ring the bell.